Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I have just filmed the part 2 for the Turn on the Light series, but I also wanted to hop on and because I was feeling a little bit inspired to talk about my journey with the sacred or divine feminine in 2020. This is something that's kind of been bombarding me in my personal life, and there's been a lot of synchronicity, which I'll get into, but there's been a lot of signs and things leading me to think that 2020 for me is going to be one where I really need to heal, find balance, create strength in my relationship with the feminine aspect of myself. There's been a few readings that I've done for myself, just various avenues that have pointed to more a shattered or broken or unhealthy relationship with that aspect. And eventually it was hard to ignore. I reflected on it, and I do agree. I think that there's a lot there that I need to heal and integrate and interact with and understand more fully. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of what I think I'm going to be doing in 2020 to interact with and go down this path. I want this to be something where I would love to hear others' journeys. I hope that my unique way of going about this and how I'm introducing it can be somewhat helpful to you if you're looking for an avenue that fits for you personally. I know that this is something that's very individual and very unique to each person, the way that we go about interacting with these aspects of ourselves. So I've seen a bunch of really inspiring ones, and at first I was like, oh, maybe that path or this way of doing it is going to be right for me. But the one that I've settled on, I haven't really seen before, so hopefully me doing it in my own way can help you to do it in your own way if you decide that this is work that you want to do in 2020 or at all whenever you're watching this. So I'll start with a small story, and I would say there are like synchronicities or certain things that led me to even want to do this work, but there's also the path itself, the specific path, and there's a lot behind that as well. So this started, I would say, the beginning of this past summer, maybe this past May or June of 2019. And I saw, well, I already had the Dark Goddess Tarot, so that's going to play into this a little bit. And I began to see a lot of symbols. If you know, here, I'm going to start showing symbols. And it's kind of going to give some things away, I guess, but it's not like it's a surprise either. So you may have seen the Fool card and I'm going to butcher the name. I'm sorry, I don't speak Gaelic. I don't have the accent, but Sheila na gig, that's how I say it when I have to say it out loud, pronounce her name. So she's the Fool in the Dark Goddess Tarot, and so yeah, I already, like, that was my first introduction to her as a symbol of the feminine, of the sacred or divine feminine. So that was already like in my head, and I thought, ooh, that's interesting. I did a little research. I looked at the PDF and did a little online search, saw her as more of like an Irish pagan that translated into Catholicism type of symbol. She's on churches as well as predating Christianity, but she made kind of this smooth transition into Catholicism and more modern practices, but kind of remaining somewhat under the radar, which I thought was kind of interesting, more so as like a symbol of course, the feminine, but also protection. There's this sort of desirability versus vulgarity, and there's just a lot behind it, and I know that there's a lot more for me to discover, but that was my first introduction to her. Then I wound up getting this deck, and I'm sorry, I know the Dark Goddess is out of print, and I know that this deck is out of print too, so I'm sorry, but the Celtic Wisdom Tarot, which isn't, I mean, it has 78 cards, but it's a lot different than like a traditional tarot, and she's also in this deck, and I didn't know when I got the deck that she was going to be in it, and in this one she's 8, which I believe in this deck is strength, especially because the name is considered or called the Liberator, so I'm thinking it more resonates with strength than it does justice or adjustment, lust or adjustment. But yeah, So I saw her in here and I was like, oh, there she is again. And this was when I was wanting to get more so into, say, studying my ancestry. I'm primarily Irish, for those who don't know. So I was kind of more drawn to that path just because I could identify with it more, and it felt like there was something about it. Of course, like I think we're all a little bit potentially more drawn to what we know our lineage is. So that's what drew me more so to that path. So amongst my studies there, it was more so wanting to study like Irish spirituality, the pagan side there, coming into Catholicism, all of that. So I had two experiences like that, and they did kind of raise this curiosity in me. I went on more online searches and so on and so forth, and I ended up creating I have my main altar, which you'll see like right here, but I created off to the side like a very little table, and I kind of devoted it to her. And my relationship with her, I see as more of her being this protector who's also I see her as also kind of bringing abundance and luck. So there's that aspect as well. And it did fit in because I was doing my workshop, the Spirit Keepers Tarot workshop. And every Thursday, you are supposed to kind of do an abundance ritual or a prosperity ritual that is unique. And I had been using a card within the deck, and I still am specifically for that ritual. And I had this ritual set up, but the workbook does encourage us to, one, create our own, and two, feel free to kind of change it up every week if we want. I did like the repetition and the ritualistic kind of set of like repeating the same thing, but I wound up doing it on this new smaller altar and kind of adding in the Sheila Nagig, and that just felt right for me. And so at that point, I wasn't even thinking of it as interacting with the divine feminine. I just thought of it as interacting with sort of this archetype or goddess or entity within Celtic spirituality. So that's where that was at during the summer. Getting more into the later half of the summer, I have an antique shop near me. It's really, really big and beautiful and wonderful, and I could spend all day there. I was recently there, and now I'm in a depth year, and I really had to restrain myself. But so I was there at the end of summer, and I remember there's like a bunch of these glass cases that have beautiful jewelry and just everything. So eventually, I came across a really awesome, beautiful figure of the Sheila Nagig, or a statuette. And immediately I saw it, and I may have even seen it before I started or knew of who she was, because it felt like I'd seen that case before, but just didn't know what the statue or was of or who it was of. So yeah, I saw it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for like 2 weeks, and it was not the cheapest statue, actually. I mean, I know it looks small, but it's quite heavy and well made, so it wasn't inexpensive. So I did save up for it a little bit before purchasing it, but I knew pretty much right away after seeing it that time, after I already sort of had the altar, was I knew that that was right for me. And I hadn't done like online searches for any statues. I didn't feel the need, but when I saw that one, it just felt like it was there. And this antique store is not particularly spiritual, so it's not like I went into like a metaphysical spiritual shop where you would expect a statue like that. So that kind of felt like a synchronicity, especially with just like the reoccurrence of her as a symbol in conjunction with me wanting to, before I even started Celtic spirituality, and then starting on that, and then seeing her more and more, researching, and then finding that. So that's where I was at, and so I have that altar to her now where the statue normally resides. Then I had a bunch of, say, like readings for myself, readings from others, where a lot of the topic and the subject matter was going into the balance of the masculine and the feminine. A lot of cards that were coming up, a lot of aspects of myself, both astrologically and within the cards. We're kind of connecting those two, and emphasizing a need for balance and interaction and union of those aspects of self. So I continued to see that, and I already had my altar, and then I'm trying to think of like how the jump off point goes. Well, then I started my YouTube channel too, and I felt for some reason a need to speak on masculinity. And of course, it's not like I'm sitting here saying that I regret those videos at all. I think I like them. I made them, and I stand by them. But so I made those. So I was already interacting with, say, like the masculine and feminine dichotomy or balance, or just making those focal points of what I wanted to speak on. And I don't know why that even was. It just felt like something I wanted to do, so I did it. So that was already going on. Then we had all of those things, and then I hadn't like ever Googled or like searched anything about her on Amazon, but of course Amazon gives you recommended things, so I'm not saying this is totally random and whatever, but I did come across this book in searching about the divine feminine, and because I wanted to sort of find an avenue that worked for me. At first I thought it was going to be more so based in either gods or goddesses or archetypes, or potentially like the Mother Mary, but that one, well, I think that there's work to be done with Mary for me, and that's I think that she's more so in like a negative shadow aspect, so that healing is going to not exactly be the best for working with the divine feminine. I mean, I was raised Roman Catholic. I went to church, had like baptism, communion, confirmation, went to church, went to like Bible school and camp and all that. So, and that's something that I kind of turned away from very vehemently in my teenage years. So, yeah, I not that I feel like I want to like yell and scream about my hatred for Catholicism at all. I would actually like to sort of reach a better place with it, but I do think there are aspects in shadow for me. So I think that any work done with Mary would actually be poking and prodding at that negative shadow, and that I would really be doing work on that instead of the divine feminine. So I needed a divine feminine or sacred feminine interaction or a figure to work with that wasn't in some sort of negative shadow. So I found this book, Sheila Na Gig, The Dark Goddess of Sacred Power. And I haven't really fully delved into this. I've recently got this. I got it, I ordered it online around Christmas, and it just recently arrived. I wasn't expecting it to be this big or like a hardcover book. I've perused, and I'm really excited to fully read it, and I've done some of my own online research, so there's already that, but I just want to gain like a better understanding of her and to interact with her as my means for healing and integrating and strengthening my relationship with the feminine aspect within myself, which I didn't. Not that I was completely unaware that it was kind of out of balance or something like that, or needed healing. Like I knew that there was just something, but I didn't think of that as being. If anything, I thought maybe the masculine needed a little bit of healing, but I think he's fine. And so I'm really excited to get into this, and I just wanted to share that. Maybe I'll have more updates to come on my findings or experiences, but I think that is going to be something I'm doing throughout 2020, a big practice for me. I talked about the decks I want to work with, so this isn't really tarot related. It's more so just my spiritual practice, although it is nice that the Celtic, I believe it's the Celtic Wisdom, yeah, Celtic Wisdom Tarot. I have the book over here. I'll show you guys actually. So it's nice that I can further those that Celtic spirituality and those studies in conjunction with that divine feminine, sacred feminine journey. So that's really wonderful, because I've been on the Celtic spirituality studies and path for about a year now. So it's nice that these two work together very cohesively. So yeah, here's a page on her. But yeah, I mean, this book is actually really great for working with the deck. So I'm sure that I'll be working, when it comes to those things, working with this deck, working with the Dark Goddess, more frequently, and more so in terms of that than just working with them for any old purpose. So that's what I'm thinking. It is a little bit difficult. There's not as... What is preventing this book from sitting in there? I guess it's just a bigger book. I'll have to figure that out later. There isn't as much about her out there, which is unfortunate, as opposed to some of the larger, better known or better recorded goddesses or figures, or archetypes. So that's unfortunate. I wish that there was almost like some sort of like oracle or cartomancy, because I really love that interactive experience. I wish that there was something like that solely dedicated to her. Maybe it's ambitious to say, but who knows? Maybe after this I'll feel compelled, or sometime within this I'll feel compelled to create that. But yeah, so that is just a little update on that, and I felt compelled to share it. I know that I posted a recent reading that I did for myself on Instagram, where I wrote a little paragraph about that, and I said that there was more to come, so I guess this is what that is. And funny enough, a lot of the readings that I've been doing for myself in that way have been with the Orosoma Tarot, and I know that I posted a little bit about my customer service experience there, but it's a really beautiful deck, so I know that sounds a little funny or could be surprising to some people, but I've really been loving that deck for aspects like that, working on that inner landscape, and there really is something about it. I know a lot of the definitions in the actual guidebook do speak to the balance and the interaction and the existence of the masculine and feminine within the self, so that's been really helpful for me. So I think that that's going to also be a front runner for my personal practice. So yeah, stay tuned for more, but I just wanted to come on and share that. I'd be really curious to know if any of you are on journeys for any sort of healing or integration, or to interact with different aspects of yourself, and what those are, what those entail, who you're working with, if you're working with like a god or a goddess, or an archetype. So yeah, let me know. I've seen a bunch of really interesting ones, and if you want to just even link a video to you or somebody else's that you think would be interesting, I'd love to see it. So yeah, until next time, guys, bye.